Hello, everyone. Welcome. Please confirm you can hear me. I hope it's better this time. Please confirm. I'll just wait for one confirmation just to be sure. I see someone is connected. Please let me know if you can hear me and see me as well, the video. Oh, great. Thank you, Ifeyinwa, for confirming. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, welcome. Sorry for the bit of delay there. We had to reconnect because of some audio issues. But glad you can hear me now. So if you're just joining, let us know where you are connecting from. And based on the topic of today, which is understanding your left-handed child, even if you don't have a left-handed child, that is completely fine. You're going to learn a lot. But let us know in the chat, in the comments, what your dominant hand is and the dominant hand of your child or your children. So let's do that poll quickly. If you're part of our WhatsApp community, of course, you would have seen the poll ongoing. If not, let us know in the chat. Before we go further, my name is Nkem Sinachi Ago, and I'm the founder of the Montessori Home Education Academy. We run an annual program called the Montessori Home Education Program, which is for parents of 0 to 6-year-olds. The program is for parents and not the children, where we cover one new subject every month. Okay, your son uses both. That's great. So that's to be ambidextrous, I think. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So in the Montessori Home Education Program, we cover a subject each month, like language, mathematics, and we've also included the coding program or programming, as well as the reading program. So you want to make sure you join in and register if you haven't done so. The early bird pricing goes away by December 6th, so just 4 days. After that, it goes from 88 CAD, Canadian dollars, to 160 Canadian dollars, which is you probably want to go for the early bird pricing if you can, right? So just make sure you tap into that. And so we go ahead, we get started. Now, supporting your left-handed child and also ambidextrous. So if anyone, I'll also ask you a little more. When you say your son uses both, how do you describe using both? Is he using both of them to write, depending on the age, or using both of them to handle different things, right? Because we find out that there's a varying definition of what ambidextrous, really fits into. So while we wait for that comment, we'll go right ahead. So today's topic is really interesting. I want to make sure that you have your notes ready and available to connect, to take notes, because there's going to be a lot of details. He eats with both. Okay, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, there are some people that are good with both, using both the left and the right, especially for writing is one of the most common ones that is used to determine ambidexterity. The person can write well with their left and write well with their right, because writing takes quite some effort, and concentration, and managing the pencil, the pen. So if someone can do both, do it well with both hands, then they are most likely ambidextrous. Eating as well is another one. Okay, so before we go into specifically left-handedness or right-handedness, we want to even understand what is hand dominance. Why is it a thing? Sometimes we may not even know that it's referred to as hand dominance. We may just see it as, oh, the person is left-handed and right-handed. But as we're going to learn down the line, it goes beyond the hands. We even have the ear dominance, we have eye dominance, we have foot dominance. Really interesting. We have two daughters, and one of them is right-handed, the other is left-handed. So I think the motivation for this topic was actually inspired by my second daughter, who is left-handed. So I tried doing some research to make sure that I'm supporting her the right way, because really you always want to understand as much as possible the child that you have, and make sure that things are suited in a way for them to grow and be supported appropriately. So hand dominance really refers to the preferred use of a particular hand, for most activities. Writing is one of the most common ones, but there are other things like picking up a toy, grasping a toy, what they prefer to use for eating, and so on, for completing specific activities. So, but we also have people who are ambidextrous. They can use either hand very comfortably and very well. We also, and most of the time, the hand dominance is confirmed around age 5. But typically from age 2, you would have started seeing that the child is using mostly left or mostly right. One thing I wanted to point out is that this hand dominance, even though most of the research shows, oh, it's from age 2, from age 3, and so on, up to age 5, thereabouts, you might also notice that your child or children start showing a preference very early. Like maybe they start using the left hand, like even for sucking their thumb very early, maybe from birth, grasping with their left very early. So one of the things that I saw while I was doing the research is that there's also pathological left-handedness, which may have come as a result of some stress, during delivery, where the brain may now have to make some adjustments. So if a child maybe was meant to use their right, they may start using their left because of one challenge or the other. But it does not mean that the left-handedness caused that challenge. It's usually the other way around. And sometimes this also gets resolved, where whatever it is, maybe the stress that had caused all that, now gets resolved. So, but generally, it is not encouraged for a child to just use one hand, to prefer only one hand from the onset. It's not that you're going to start, if they're sucking with their left thumb, you start pulling it out, or if they're doing something with left hand, you start smacking them. No, the whole idea is that you want to make sure that they have the opportunity to develop both hands, especially if they already have a preference early on. Because normally, when they don't have that preference for one hand or the other, they can pick with left, pick with right. So both hands are active, both hands are growing and developing appropriately. They are building strength and dexterity to a fair extent in both hands, which is helpful, right? Because if you don't exercise a muscle, of course, it's going to start having some challenges with being able to do things well and be active. So you want to make sure that both hands, at least up to 18 months, they have the opportunity to use both hands, right? There are some things they will definitely prefer one, especially if they started very early to show a preference. It's not for you to stop that, but it's for you to take notes and then make sure they have opportunities to use the other hand that they seem to be somewhat avoiding, if that is the case. Okay, so what now that we say, okay, you don't want a child to focus so much on one hand too early, before 18 months especially, then what are the activities that you can introduce to the child, to the baby, to the toddler, your preschooler, kindergartner, to make sure that they are able to use both hands at least when the need arises. So there's some of yeah, I'm going to be sharing 5 major activities. Of course, there are so many more, but this will give you an idea of things that you can make sure that is included in their playtime, included in their daily activities. So please confirm you can still hear me. So one of the things that I'm going to be sharing is you want to make sure that they can do activities that involves pushing. So pushing is, of course, you use 2 hands, like some of the baby push carts or push walkers or so on, where they grab and they push. So they're using both hands and they're pushing, right? This is something that from the moment they start standing or they start walking a little bit, they can begin to practice this. But even before that, they might have the opportunity to, if you to pick a toy, for instance, you want to make sure that you're putting things, let's say, in the center so that they can grab it with either hand, or they even have the opportunity to grab with either hand. What this will do is that it will also help you to see what is their preference. Are they still trying to grab with the left? Let's say, even if you put something on the right, are they trying to grab with the left? That's showing you a very clear preference from the onset. So you need to do some work to make sure they have opportunity to practice with the right hand. So this is about practicing and developing both hands. This is not about forcing them or preventing them from using their dominant hand. Another one you want to do is like, so I talked about carrying, when they start moving around toddling, you can have a lot of play that goes on maybe in the kitchen. They can carry pots, they can use 2 hands for that. Carrying a box also usually requires 2 hands. So any box, baskets, whatever it is that involves them holding something with 2 hands. Another activity is climbing. So climbing, they will usually have to go like this, like this. So they are using both hands. They are building strength in both hands. Very key, especially below 18 months and even below 2 years. You want to make sure they are developing both muscles and both hands as much as possible. The fifth activity that I will share. So I've shared putting things in the center and sometimes alternating between putting something on the left or on the right for them to grab it. Um, Pushing activities, carrying activities, climbing activities, and also sensory play. So sensory play is the last one. The good thing about sensory play, let's say playing with Play-Doh or with sand, most of the time they are not going to be using just one hand to play around with Play-Doh. They'll mostly manipulate it. They are doing the two like this. They are pulling. They are, massaging and rubbing and all sorts of things. They are throwing. And even with water play, if they have two cups, they could be transferring from one cup to the other, right? So these are activities that you can do and introduce regularly in your child's activities so that they have opportunity to practice and develop both hands, not necessarily equally, but at least to a good and fair extent. Now, the next question is, when it comes to hand dominance, right? How does a child develop hand dominance? Because sometimes you also have a case where ambidexterity is a thing, of course, where they can use both hands properly. But sometimes you also have a case where the child just hasn't selected or hasn't shown which hand is their dominant hand. So it's different when they're ambidextrous and it's established. But it's another thing when they don't seem to have a preferred hand, and it's not like they're doing anything well with both hands. They're not really, you can't see that efficiency or dexterity with both hands. So what is really happening is that they haven't chosen or they haven't been able to develop strength in both hands because they've been switching a lot. So they switch from the left sometimes, use the right sometimes, which means developing hand dominance is very key. What this does is that when with the dominant hand, let's say your right hand is dominant, that's the hand you're going to use to write, and you'll be able to hold the pencil well within a short time or with reasonable practice. You'll be able to make your beads and do lacing activities. Some small activities here and there are more practical when you have your dominant hand. So that's what your dominant hand is used for. Some articles will refer to it as the doing hand and the helping hand. So the helping hand is the non-dominant hand, and the doing hand is the dominant hand. So there are some activities you also want to do to make sure that your child is able to actually have a dominant hand, if that is their case, if they are not ambidextrous, or even to confirm that they are really ambidextrous. So one of them is you have to observe your child, see which hand they use for picking toys, for grasping, for eating. If they're already writing, which hand they use for writing. So if you see that they are switching, they are using both, then the next thing you want to do, so we're going to share 5 strategies. Of course, you want to stay to the end of the session because we're going to go into the 10 ways you want to support your child, especially those that are left-handed. But you will find out you also learn some things for the right-handed child as well. So after observing and following your child, you're going to now teach them to cross their midline. So crossing their midline involves doing things that makes them take their hand, from one side to another part, the other side of their body. So if, for example, I have a pair of scissors that I want to grab with my left hand and it's on the right side, it means I have to go this way. So I'm crossing the center line of my body, the midline, right? So being able to do that also helps with the brain formation and the child's development to know, where their left is and where their right is, and also get used to choosing the hand that is now dominant, right? Or the other way, going from right to left, as long as you can cross that midline. So activities that help with that. One of the activities that was shared in an article I was looking at from Cork and Kerry Pediatrics Department. I'll share the link is in the video description. Is something like drawing a rainbow. So if you want to draw a rainbow, for instance, you're going to have, so if it's a big rainbow, you're probably going to have to go like this, all the way from your left to your right. Or if you're left-handed, if the left hand is your dominant hand, you have to go from your right all the way to your left. So that is also helping you to cross the midline. These are some of the things that help a child with developing hand dominance and see which one is their preferred hand, so that they can begin to start building strength and dexterity in that hand. We also have a lot of activities like scooping, lacing. So while the previous strategies I shared was about developing both hands, we now have activities that will help develop one hand as the dominant hand. So things like scooping, most times to be able to scoop, the child will either use left or right, depending on which one is more comfortable for them. So when they do activities like that, they are building strength and building dexterity in that hand that is their dominant hand. You also want to teach them activities that will help with building their shoulder strength, their arm strength, and their hand hand strength, right? So again, there are so many activities out there. Fine motor, if you just Google, if you just search for fine motor skills or fine motor activities, they are there. I'm also going to share more in our WhatsApp community. The link to join, if you are not there already, is in the video description. So just click to join that. So already so far, we've talked about hand dominance. We've talked about strategies to help your child build strength in both hands, regardless of their preference. And now we've also looked at strategies to develop hand dominance if your child doesn't seem to have settled on one yet. Again, there are some children, there are people who are ambidextrous, they're able to use both hands efficiently and clearly, but you want to make sure you don't conclude too quickly. If they actually have a dominant hand and maybe they've just not had many activities where they have to cross their midline, which I described as the center line of the body, and they have to go from left to right or right to left. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, put it in the comments. I'll be responding as we go. Now, a question someone might ask, okay, right hand or left hand, which one is better? So, of course, you will probably guess my opinion would be none is better. It's really about learning how to support each hand or what works best for the person's dominant hand. Now, this will also lead us to why why people try to change their handedness, especially changing from left to right hand. I think that's the common one. You may not have so many people trying to change their right-handed child to a left-handed child, but you have a lot trying to change left to right-handedness. So I'll just share some of the reasons from a book. This is a book that I was reviewing, very, very helpful book. This is Your Left-Handed Child, Making Things Easy for Left-Handers in a Right-Handed World. And this was written by Lauren Milsom. So I put a link to the book in the video description as well. You can check it out. I found it very helpful because it talked a lot in details about how to support children that are left-handed, and even adults. If you're left-handed and maybe you never even had that support, you will learn a lot from the book as well. So in the book, it shared about why people try to change their handedness or their child's dominant hand. So one of them is traditions or customs, depending on the tradition, maybe how left hand use is looked at. Religious reasons as well. Religious reasons are also some of the reasons why people may want to change from their child from using left hand to right hand. Laziness is also one of them. Sometimes the convenience for the adult, if you feel like you have to make so many adjustments to accommodate a child that is left-handed, you may just feel like, you know what, I'm going to get you to start using your right hand because it's too much stress for me. So that is also one of the reasons why someone might want to change. Social and family prejudice. Maybe you have the only left-handed child in the family, or you are the only left-handed person that you know within the family space. There can be that bias or that discomfort that comes with it. Some people also believe it is more practical for the child to be right-handed than left-handed because, so this might come from a good intention place, but it's really not a good intention for the child. Maybe you feel as if everything is already suited for right-handed people. So let's just help the child to become right-handed now so that they don't suffer later in life, assuming that's the perception. There are also some concerns. Some people may just simply be concerned that, they feel the child is an imperfection to be using your left hand. So we want to make them perfect. We want to try and fix the child. So these are some of the reasons. Of course, if you know some more, feel free to share it in the chat. I would like to see what are the reasons you've heard why people may try to change someone from being left-handed to right-handed. Okay, so those are some of the reasons that we have. Like I know even some people or some traditions, where you might have, you don't shake somebody with your left hand, you don't take things with your left hand and some of those things. So with all those perceptions, people may try to, out of either good intention, goodwill, or just maybe feeling bad about it or even feeling some shame about it. There are so many possible reasons. So, but we're going to now look at the consequences of changing a child's handedness or changing a person's handedness. Like even us as adults, we may have been in the situation where we were the ones that our own handedness was changed. So we want to look at some of the consequences, which if you spot or if you notice that, okay, this is something you're dealing with, or this is something you're noticing in your child who maybe you have tried to change their sorry, excuse me. So if it's something you notice that is showing up in a child that you've tried to change their handedness, or even for yourself, then you want to take note and see what you can do to correct that. So one of the consequences of changing handedness. Now, we need to understand that with the way the brain is structured, we have the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And the left hemisphere, which is the left side of the brain, basically controls the right side of the body. And the right hemisphere, which is right side of the brain, controls the left side of the body. So what that means is that um, if a child is left-handed, so their left hand is controlled by the right hand, then you start trying to switch them to use the right hand instead. You're already definitely going to start causing some confusion in the child, right? And then so you're going to be overloading. So if the left hand is controlled by the right side of the brain, and if you now start switching it, you're trying to make the left side of the brain do what the right side should be doing. Basically, left, right. What am I really saying? You're going to be transferring some activities that is meant for one side of the brain to another side. So the brain is going to start getting overloaded and overworked in certain areas. So we know that, for instance, the left hemisphere controls certain things like um, logic and so on. The right hemisphere controls things like emotions, creativity, and again, so on. Language, speech, writing, they are all controlled by different sides of the brain. Now, the more you cause a child to switch what a side of the brain should be doing and they start having to transfer it to another hand, that is literally impacting the brain directly and what the brain now has to do. So let's say you've shared work between two people and then you start taking work from one person and transferring it to the other person. You're going to have one person overloaded and the other person doing little to no work compared to all the activities the child would have been using left hand for or right hand for. And what does that imply? It means the child is going to be losing concentration quickly, getting tired easily. If a left-handed child, for instance, is made to write with their right hand, they're going to be getting exhausted easily. You can try it as a right-handed person if you're a right-handed person to write with your left. You see, even you too, you will need a break in a very short space of time. So that is one of the reasons, the non-dominant side of the brain will not change if you change the dominant hand. So you want to make sure you don't tamper with things like that. Spatial disorientation is another disadvantage or consequence of trying to change a child from left hand to right hand or vice versa. So mixing the left and right side. So knowing where their left is and where their right is. Again, with the way the brain is structured and already very well developed and primed to control the different sides of the body, and then you start switching it manually by yourself without proper occupational therapy and guidance, of course, they are going to start struggling with where is their left and where is their right, because already the mind is able to detect their left and right more easily with just a little vocabulary definition that, okay, this side is left, this side is right. For your typical right-handed child, when you explain it a couple of times, they can associate it with something. Maybe the hand I use for doing this particular thing is my right side, and the one I use for doing this thing is my left side. However, for the left-handed child, when you now start making them to do things that they would have done with their left, with their right, they may start getting confused. Their natural perception to say this is their right will now become their left, and vice versa. So again, that is another thing you don't want to tamper with. Now, I'll go ahead to say sometimes there might be injuries or some other things that might go on that would make someone have to resort to using their non-dominant hand, right? So if you're right-handed and your right hand gets hurt for one reason or the other, and you have to use your left, this is something that has to be relent. And there are also things that are there's proper training and methods to follow to be able to do that at least for a while until you have you regain control of the other hand. And most of the time, of course, you would have to switch back. You will not say, oh, your right hand is healed now, but you're going to keep using your left. So I know sometimes I've got the question where, oh, I already switched, I thought it was bad to use left hand, I made my child start using right, what to do. So that their dominant hand will still be the preference. So even though they have to relearn, it might be much easier and much better to go back to that left, of course, with the right guidance, with the right occupational therapy that is required to see, okay, what has really changed and how can you bring them back so that they can begin to thrive and get comfortable with their natural dominant hand. Another thing that is common a common consequence of switching hands or forcing a child to change their dominant hand is having some challenges with speech. Again, as I was explaining, we have different sides of the brain controlling the speech, controlling language. So it will just make sense that if you go and overload one side, that should be doing some other tasks that maybe was handling language to now start doing other things, then of course you will start having challenges. It's manifests in different ways for different people. Sometimes something like stammering, it does not mean that of course that is the only cause of stammering, but these are some examples of things that could happen when you try to tamper or change the way the brain works naturally because you just don't like the fact that the child is using their left hand. Things like nail biting, bedwetting, these are all signs of stress and pressure, and that is something that a left handed child who is being made to use their right hand can also begin to show and to go through. Especially if, for example, they've started school, started writing, or maybe the teachers are trying to change their hand use, or the parents themselves are trying to change their hand use. You may start seeing some of these things showing up. Another example is low self-esteem. If you find that, of course, that you're not playing to your strengths, you're not doing things according to how it would naturally show up for you, you might start having self-esteem issues because there's also the clumsiness that comes with trying to do something with the wrong hand in quote. Again, so like me, I'm right-handed. If I'm made to write with my left, my handwriting, of course, is not going to look the same. It's not going to look as nice as if I'm writing with my right hand. So I'm going to feel uncomfortable about it. I'm not going to be happy that my writing is not looking like my mate's handwriting. But all this is just because I'm not working according to my strengths, right? So it's the same thing for a left-handed child who is made to use their right hand to do certain things. They're not going to be playing according to their strengths. They're not going to do well in things that they would have normally done very well with or in. And even if it looks like they are doing well, it means they could have done so much better if they were allowed, and encouraged to use their left foot and all that. And it's quite common. But I think I always sort of assume that, okay, if someone is playing with their left foot, they are left handed. But that is not always the case. I think I was even checking Lionel Messi, who plays with his left foot. But I was even seeing that sometimes when he's in particular positions on the field, he plays with the right and so on. But basically, he's right handed and left footed. So we have cases where someone is cross dominant, where they are using their right hand for something, left hand for left foot, for the other thing. There's also the ear dominance and eye dominance. So these are all things, peculiarities with people, with children that you want to stay and observe. There are a lot of tests. The book I had talked about earlier on, which I said the link is in the video description, um, shared some examples of different tests you can use to determine your hand dominance, your leg, feet dominance, your eye and ear dominance. In fact, she talked about how the feet and the eye dominance, especially for left-handed or left-footed people, tends to even favor them in sports. Sometimes it's because, okay, people are not familiar. Maybe the right-handed person is not familiar with the way the ball moves or the particular sport goes when it is approaching them from the way a left-handed or left-footed person might do it. Um, the ear dominance for one of the sample questions. This is just one of many. Is which ear do you use to answer your calls? I thought it was by default on the right ear because I'm right-handed. But some people they might be right-handed and they take calls with their left. So that is an ear dominance. That's just an example, of course. That's just one question out of many. But it was really interesting. I think you will actually want to do some more research as well, and see how it really works, because when you observe your child and see the things they are doing, you will know that you want to support them, support the child that you have, not the one that you want to have. Because little things like this, for example, seeing that uh, part of the research, seeing that a lot of leaders, a number of leaders, are found to be seen to be left-handed. Like we have Obama, Bill Gates, even Julius Caesar, all the way back. There was also a trend with artists, so creativity and art, spatial awareness. These are things that are common with the right hemisphere of the brain, which controls the left side of the body. So typically, again, this is just typically based on some research, the left-handed person is more likely, to be in that creative field, the sports field, the arts field, um, and also musical aptitude, while the right-handed person is more likely to be in the logical fields, the math science. It does not mean, of course, that they can't do well, like either handedness or dominance cannot do well in either of these fields, but these are just things that you can look out for. And if you observe that, okay, you're already seeing some of that preference, or you're seeing them struggling in one area or the other, it does not mean they can't do well. It just means you walk from their area of strength, to the area of weakness. So if they're artistic and creative, and you see that they're struggling with math and science, then you want to bring in some art into that mathematics. You want to bring in some creativity into the science. Don't make it so dull and boring. That you work basically from what they have to what you want them to get, which is kind of how the Montessori approach works, right? It works based on every child. So of course, there's the curriculum, there's the methodology, but it will always check who is the child that is using this method and what is the best approach. You also look at learning styles. How do they learn? If a child is more interested in painting and coloring, and you're trying to teach them language, all right, then you want to make sure you're using some colorful items to get the message across. So it does not mean they cannot do either dominance, whether right side of the brain, left side of the brain cannot do what the other. Of course, the brain is connected, and the two hemispheres communicate. But you want to observe your child, document, and then see where their strength is, so that you use that to build on where their weaknesses or challenges are. Still sharing on some of the popular left-handers. We have artists like Michelangelo, we have musicians, and also sports. I think I checked Venus Williams is left-handed. So there are many of them, there are many examples, but just to give you an idea that left-handedness is not an issue. It is just something you need to understand and then work with the child to support them. Please, as much as possible, if you know somebody or if you yourself are in that situation, do not change the dominant hand of your child. Instead, help them. Of course, if they are very young, if they are still babies, you want to help them to be able to use both hands and develop strength in both hands. But you want to support that left-handedness and even make adjustments where necessary to help them to thrive and do things as well as their right-handed counterparts, because it is very possible with the right knowledge, with the right tools, and with the right skills. Okay, so again, any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Even if you're catching this as a replay, just put in your questions, you will get a response later on. So now we're going to be looking at 10 ideas to support your child. If you haven't invited somebody and you're here, please send the link to them, because this is very important, how to support your left-handed child. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please click on the subscribe button, click on the like button. These are things that help more people to see this video and take advantage of the video as well. Okay, I'm just checking that this is working. Okay. All right, so we go right ahead to 10 ideas to support your child who is left-handed. Now, the first and the most common area where there's a bit of a struggle is with writing. It was very interesting to learn some things as I was reading the book that I shared and also doing some research. You want to, one of the things that is noticed is how the left-handed person grips a pencil. So, of course, even right-handed people struggle initially with children trying to grip it. But the left-handed person is more likely to grip it very tightly, which is something that makes them uncomfortable, makes them tired quickly, because of the way, especially for pens, how they are structured and how you must hold it in a particular way. So what you want to do with that, especially for younger children, get them started with things like crayons. The crayon has a big surface. You must not hold it in a particular way. Just once you're able to hold it, they can practice the tripod grasp, or the pincer grasp that is used, for writing, and then they can use this to practice and at least build that confidence that, oh, I can write. It does not mean Because if you're trying to practice with something like a pencil, it's going to be much harder initially to get the proper grip. So let them practice with things like crayons before they move or graduate to pencils and pens. You also want to make sure that the paper positioning is the right order. Now, that paper positioning is a very big one. I'm going to share a bit of an illustration. So this is letter V, okay? So if you write letter V on your own end, the right side, let me touch, depending on how this is showing up, this might be showing as left or right. So write letter V on your own paper. The right side of it is how the paper should be slanted when a left-handed person is writing. So somewhat like this. So I'm going to turn a bit. Okay. So if you're right-handed, it would normally face, you point it this way and write. The left-handed person would face the paper in the opposite direction. If you want to remember, you can actually just try writing. If you're right-handed, see how you would normally slant the paper to be able to write, and then you turn it the other direction. Okay, so you turn it the other direction. So basically the right side of the V is how the paper or book should be slanted when a left-handed child is writing. That is very key because most of the time you find that they develop this it's not a good habit because if they have to write like this, it's called the hook, where they're trying to write from the top. Because when they write the typical way with the average books that we have, their hands, the left-handed person's hand, will be blocking what they are writing. So they have to now bend their hands in funny positions to be able to do what they need to do. And again, this is another thing that gets them tired quickly from writing. And they're reluctant to write, or their writing is just, like scribbles, and so on. So you want to make sure you're getting the position of the book well, and you're also putting it at a slightly higher position than when you are writing with your right hand. Another challenge that is faced by a left-handed person when they are writing is the binder of the book. So you see most books, again, that's why it's like the world, a lot of things are tailored to a right-handed person. We may not easily notice that there are challenges that a left-handed person will face, except you are left-handed or you have a left-handed child. So with this binder here, a right-handed person can easily go, this way, but the left-handed person would have to, again, kind of block through, deal with this obstruction each time they are writing this way. So one simple fix for that is to get books or notebooks that either don't have this at all or they are bound at the top. So if it's bound at the top, then you can write this way. But of course, I know that we don't have so many lined books that are structured that way. You might have to search for it a bit, or you get the ones that don't have this kind of obstacles in the first place. So that's some important points to note as it concerns writing. Also with writing, you also want to make sure that where the child is sitting, like in a classroom, preferably they are sitting on the left edge if it's a shared desk, or even if the desks are side by side, you want to make sure that they are sitting towards the left, because if they are sitting close to a right-handed person, then the elbows are going to be bumping. The right-handed person is writing this way. So two right-handers, no issues. But when you have left and right side by side, the left-handed person should be on the left-hand side so that those elbows will not be knocking. It sounds like a small thing, but it's a big issue if a child has to deal with that every single day. So the next point is eating. We're talking about 10 ideas to support your child. Of course, it's ultimately more than 10 because some of these ideas have children and sub grandchildren. So again, with eating, just like with writing, you want to position the left-handed child towards the left side of the table. This is not something you do as if it's something bad or some kind of punishment. It's just for it to be convenient for everybody and also have them enjoy their meal in peace without that elbow bumping because they are eating with their left. You might also want to position something like their water. There's a sometimes, let's say, a joke or some common things talk about maybe the left-handed person being more likely to grab the water, the cup of water for the person sitting beside them, because cup of water is usually positioned at the top right. So if someone beside you, their water is there, then with your left hand, you will just default and grab it if you're a left-handed person, by default. So the way the table is set, the way the people are sitting are things you want to take note of, which you may not have easily noticed before or even seen as an issue. Cutting is another very big one, especially for children when they start doing arts projects. You want to make sure that they have the right tools. But even in the kitchen, you have potato peelers, apple peelers. A lot of these tools are structured, even with the position of the blade, serrated knives. The way it cuts is more favorable for the right hand person than the left hand person, except you now get a left handed peeler, left handed knife. Some of these things are more available in some locations than others, but just being aware at least would help you to empathize if your child is struggling with some of those activities. But for the scissors, I think that one is quite common. So these are two pairs of scissors. They look almost identical. I mean, not identical. They are different colors, but the shape you can see there's a small side and a big side. This also has a small side and big side. Sometimes when you want to search for a left-handed scissors, you would see some that would say, "Oh, it works for both left and right hand." Please, that is wrong, and it's not correct. In fact, it's from all that I've seen, it is impossible to have one pair of scissors to be both left and right-handed, right-handed scissors. So a right-handed scissors will work well and be comfortable for a right-handed person, and a left-handed scissors will work well and be comfortable for a left-handed person. If you try to use it as a right-handed person, it will be uncomfortable for you, and vice versa for the right-handed one. So this one, for example, is one of those that said um, it works for left and right hand. It's not correct because at least I tested it with my own daughters. The right-handed daughter can use it comfortably. The left-handed struggles with it a lot. And I had to start looking at it. I said, I thought this was right and left handed. That was how I started doing some research and saw that there's nothing like left and right handed scissors. So you might find your child, if they are left handed, struggling to cut certain things or making mistakes or just getting frustrated with a pair of scissors. So this can easily be fixed. I'll show quickly how to tell the difference between the two. Um, so the right handed scissors, so it's not about the size of the opening or whatever. It's more about which blade goes up and down to do the cutting. So this is the blade on the right side. It goes up and does the cutting. So this is a right-handed scissors, even though it said right and left hand. Now this is a left-handed scissors. Whether I use my right hand or my left hand to open it, the blade that is going up is the blade on the left-hand side. So notice here, the blade on the right went up. Here, the blade on the left went up. Because it's that blade that goes up that does the actual cutting. So if you're left-handed and trying to use this one, you're just going to be like using a blunt scissors. So it's going to be a struggle. I don't know if I put the link in the video description, but I'll put it for this one if you need for your left-handed child. Because it makes all the difference. The moment I gave, so my daughter is, the younger one is 2, the left one who is left-handed. And the moment she's struggling with this one, I even got a different one. I had to return it until we got this one. The moment she just held it and she was able to cut quickly. So it makes a big difference, at least so that she doesn't get traumatized by scissors. If she sees a scissors, she'll start wondering, this thing that I don't know how to use, or I can't seem to use well. So cutting is something that you can easily fix by getting the right scissors for them. Dressing, even something like dressing, I didn't think about this initially, but the position of hooks, buttons, and even zips. So like the book I was sharing with us, your left-handed child book, it talked about how for boys, for instance, the position of the zip on the trouser or the pants, if you have the flap, right, it's easier for the right-handed person to just open and close. But for the left-handed child, they'll probably have to open the flap first, zip up and down. So some little things like that, you might see your child struggling with dressing, trying to put the hook at the back of their dress, and it's looking like it's taking longer than when the right-handed child does it. This is really because the way these things have been designed is usually with the right-handed person in mind, and you have to now deliberately support the left-handed person to use it or get the one that is suitable for them. Another another common tool is something like the ruler. So when you have a ruler that a child, these are things that are common in a classroom, which a child can easily be struggling with without even knowing that they are having a challenge. They just see it as this is something they have to deal with. So when you have a ruler, I don't have one beside me here, but normally you have when you're ruling, you would go from left to right. Let's say you're measuring 0 centimeters. So you're seeing the dimension and you're ruling, but the left-handed child who would normally rule the other way around, may now have to take their own measurements from the back, going from back to front and so on. So if you can't get a left-handed ruler, of course, being aware of it will now help you to guide your child on how they can, overcome that little challenge. Sharpeners, another common, very simple item, um, is also something that a child could struggle with if they are left-handed, because the typical sharpener, you know, the blade is on this side. So if you want to sharpen, you turn it to the right. Notice when you're sharpening with your right hand, you're turning outwards. It's comfortable for your wrist. But the left-handed child trying to use this same sharpener, they'll hold it with the non-dominant hand, put the pencil or so, and then to turn it, see how you would now. Actually, if you turn it this way, which is how the left hand should go, it's not going to sharpen. You have to turn it the other way. So the child is doing like this. So there are so many things that are just there to tire out the left-handed child. Um, it can be really frustrating and difficult if you're not even aware that this is something that they are struggling with. So nowadays it's getting more and more common to see like left-handed math sets, mathematical tools to make these things easier. But if you cannot find it, of course, being aware of it is a very big step to help them and to support them through it. Another common one is having a desk, where the classroom desk has a writing pad, the type that folds, and you can bring it up or put it down. Most of the time it's positioned on the right side, for the right-handed child to just fold it and start writing. So if your child is left-handed and maybe you haven't even visited their classroom, you don't know how the desks are set up, it's definitely worth checking it out and seeing how to make adjustments if it's something you need to provide, if it's something the school has to provide. But just being aware can make a difference, or even providing portable writing pads or writing tablets for the child. Computers, again, this is another good one I saw. There's the left-handed mouse. If you're already familiar with it, that's good for you. But I was happy to discover this. Left-handed mouse, and this is not just about transferring the mouse from the right side of the computer to the left side, but also even the what do you call it? The place you click. If you're right-handed, of course, you'll be clicking the left side of the mouse, right? But if you're left-handed, the default will be to click the right side of the mouse. So even the setting on the computer has to be changed to provide that feedback that this is going to be used as a left-handed mouse, so that the person, the child, children, adults, when they start using the computer, are able to do that comfortably. Electronic equipment and tools are another one. Sometimes the way the controls are positioned, there's also left-handed keyboard. So many of these things that if you don't really think about it, you won't be able to make that accommodation for your child or to support them through it. So we have tools and equipment whereby the controls are positioned in such a way that if you're left-handed, it's going to be hard for you, to operate it and also use the controls at the same time. So you want to pay attention to that. And generally, the recommendation is that if they struggle, with basic, if you've implemented some of these changes and they're still struggling with their dexterity, use of their hands, their fingers, then you want to make sure you check out, see the doctor. I think the occupational therapist is the more frequently contacted person for something like this, use of the hands and fine motor skills and all that. So if you're already doing some of these activities and you find that they're still struggling with writing, struggling with doing some activities with their hands, then you seek, of course, professional opinion so that you can see how best to support your child with what they are doing. So I think those are the 10 ways, 10 plus some extra of how you can support your left-handed child. I would like to see more. What is it that you are doing? How have you been supporting your child if you have been doing that already? And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, put it in our WhatsApp community. If you haven't signed up for our program, the early bird offer goes away December 6th, which is on, I believe that is on Friday. December 6th is on Friday. So make sure you sign up for the program before that date so you can pay the early bird fee of 88 Canadian dollars. Of course, you can pay with any currency. You just check out our website in the video description. And otherwise, I will see you all again next week. Thank you so much for joining our live session. This was a very good. I definitely enjoyed this myself. I hope you enjoyed it too, and I'll connect with you all again next time. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.